Hey there everybody, my name is Kat Bowser. I'm your resident fantasy therapist and welcome back to my channel. Those of you here for the first time, welcome. My name is Kat Bowser. I'm a licensed therapist. I'm also a writer working on my first novel. And on my channel I like to talk about what I consider to be the heart of writing, and that's the characters. And the heart of the characters is their psychology. So that's the angle I like to take with pretty much everything I talk about on my channel. Alright guys, so this video is another trope diagnosis. It is late because the computer I used to record my videos completely crashed and we had to wipe the whole thing and put in a whole new operating system. That was fun. So, but it's working now, so yay. So this trope diagnosis I actually had planned to put up on Friday. And I didn't even realize when I was planning that how weird this trope felt to put up on Friday, but it seems appropriate. So we're going to talk about the resurrection trope. So the resurrection trope is probably one of the most controversial tropes in fiction, in that most people hate it. I'm not one of them, but it is a trope that is very difficult to get right. So a resurrection trope is essentially a character in your story has died and then they are brought back to life through some kind of means, usually magical means or divine intervention, something like that. So I understand why people don't like this trope, because generally when you kill a character off, one, you want to do it for a reason, and if you're doing it for a reason, then you generally want to leave them dead, because I think killing characters off for shock value is one thing that drives me completely insane, and I'm not the only writer it drives insane. But I do think it can be well done. But it's one of those that there's nuances to it. The main thing that a resurrection trope does is it removes the tension, it removes the consequences. And I can see that, because if you have someone who is killed and then they're brought back, well, then why do your other characters have to fear death? It's a legit point. So my thoughts on it is that if you're going to use this trope, you need to find a way to make it limiting. Why can't it be used all the time? I actually really like it when this trope is used like all the stars aligned. It was a 1 in a million shot kind of thing. It's not going to happen again. I like it when authors do that, because then you've brought back usually a fan favorite character. But there's still the tension that the other characters will not be saved this way. Now, the kicker to this is you got to stick to that. If you kill another character, you cannot bring them back too. This needs to be a rarity. It can't be something that happens all the time. Great example. Much as I love Dragon Ball, once you get past like the Cell arc, a lot of the tension really goes away, because you can revive someone with the Dragon Balls. If somebody gets killed, no problem, we'll just bring them back. Same thing, Earth gets blown up or something, no problem, we'll bring it back. So a lot of the consequences have gone. It holds my attention because I love the characters, but the tension and the anxiety of the earlier seasons is never there again. So that's an example. Let's see. The other thing is, what is the consequence when you bring someone back? Because you're kind of messing around with nature a little bit, aren't you? So are they going to come back the same? Is something going to be different? Even though I'm not a huge fan of A Song of Ice and Fire, I do like that when characters are brought back, they're not brought back the same. Something's missing, like a piece of their humanity is missing. For example, spoilers, I guess, for A Song of Ice and Fire. Catelyn is killed in the Red Wedding, and then she is resurrected in the books as Lady Stoneheart. But she is resurrected quite a long period of time after she's killed, so most of her humanity is gone. So she's this very cold, vengeful creature, like a mere shadow of her former self, essentially. And that's kind of interesting. I'm not sure where they're going with it because the next book hasn't come out, but it is an interesting thought that you come back, but you're not the same person. Like part of you is gone. Um, so I like that kind of angle too. That if they're brought back, they're not the same. Kind of like Stephen King does in Pet Cemetery. People come back, or animals come back, and they're different. They're not the same person they were before. That adds a little tension, and that makes things awkward and unusual for people. So I like that too. Um, the other thing, and this is purely from my psychological viewpoint, I always wondered what psychologically happens to someone that's brought back from the dead. Because really, our brains, you don't really start to truly comprehend what death even is till you're like 8 to 10 ish, something like that. Um, Before that, it's kind of a foreign concept. Like little kids, a lot of times, even if you explain to them, grandma has died, grandpa has died, they'll still ask when they're coming back. They'll still ask, where did they go, that kind of thing. And it's not because they're not listening; it's because they just can't comprehend this permanentness. Um, Forever is a very abstract concept, and little kids have a really hard time grasping it. So, telling someone that grandma is gone forever from this world, or however you want to phrase it, they really struggle to wrap their mind around that. And so that makes me wonder if someone is dies and is brought back, how is their mind going to cope with that? Because if it's an adult, then they already have this idea in their mind that death means permanent, but it wasn't permanent for them. So I think that can lead to almost a kind of survivor's guilt. Why was I brought back and nobody else was? Um, if it's a child, that's even more complicated because, like I said, children have a hard time grasping the concept of death, especially if they're very young. So if they die and are brought back, then how are they coping with it? Do they think that they just went to sleep? Is it something they can't remember at all? Do they know something odd happened and they just can't put their finger on it? There's lots of different angles you can take with that. And I think that could be really interesting to follow. So I think I think with this trope, it's just never used correctly. I think there's a lot of different things you could do with this trope to make it interesting and fun to follow and see what happens. But a lot of authors just kind of use it as a cheap way to bring back someone they like. So, in my mind, when you kill off a character, their death needs to mean something. It needs to move the plot forward. Same thing if you resurrect a character. It needs to mean something and it needs to move the plot forward. So, if you're going to bring someone back, what is that effect going to have on the people who have already mourned? Have they already been buried and now they're brought back? Is their body just gone? I mean, lots of different things here. Lots of different questions that authors, I don't think, always take the time to answer. But my main thing, like I said with this, I think it is ripe for psychological exploration. Because, I mean, if you have a culture, for example, that has a belief in an afterlife, and you have someone that came back, can they remember the afterlife? Was there an afterlife? Was there something else that was entirely different? Did they find out their religion's false and that Joe Schmo over there, his religion's correct? Is nobody's religion correct? Lots of different things. Again, lots of different questions that could be explored and I think should be explored because I think it'd be fun. But like I said, I get why people don't like this trope because most of the time it is done just to undo a shock value death. So if you're going to use this trope, I think it should be planned out. It should never be a trope that is just thrown in there because you're sad you killed off your favorite character and you want to bring them back. That's a cheap way to use it and it doesn't work well. But if it's something that you've put a lot of thought into and considered, okay, here's the consequences of the character dying, and here's the consequences when they come back, and here's how they mesh together. That can be fun to read. and I'd love to write it too. So those are just my thoughts on the resurrection trope. Like I said, totally get if this isn't your thing. I totally see why people don't like it, and I agree a lot of the time that it's not used correctly. But I think it's one of those that has the potential to be so interesting. So I'll just leave it at that. So thank you guys for chiming in. If you guys like this kind of content, make sure you comment or subscribe, or both. I love to respond to comments. I'll get to you guys as soon as I can. If you guys have any suggestions or tropes that you want me to dig into, just let me know. I always love to take requests. I can't guarantee I'll get to them right away, but I will definitely get to them. I always try to upload for you guys every Friday, every Sunday. I will try to throw some extra ones in though if I can. So that being said, I hope you guys have a good one, and I'll see you in the next video.